All right, so yesterday during discussions, the two plans that we came towards in the end, because we didn't have a plan before we left the museum, was either to do something regarding the legal system or do something regarding affirmative action. So after we went to the museum, we tried to get a plan that incorporated something we learned from the museum, and we also wanted to be a USFG plan, because as we understood at the time, it had to be the United States federal government pushing the action, but it was later stated that it wasn't, but already made that. But we decided that the best way, or the best plan, would be trying to fight the prison system, the private prison system, with USFG. So our plan is, USFG should abolish the private prison system by no longer contracting in private prisons in an effort to reform the prison system and end mass incarceration. Currently, 7 million federal prisoners are held in private prisons. These private prisons are contracted by state and federal agencies. These private prisons companies make money by buying contracts to build private prisons, and through a quota saying they will get money for empty prison cells. So even if there's nobody in the cell, the state and the tax dollars have to pay as if there was somebody in that cell. So they pay some money. And they also contract out these prisoners to private companies for a form of labor. This means taxpayer dollars go for or pay for empty prison cells. Police officers have incentives to arrest more people to fill these prisons, to build more, feeding the complex. And sentences given to prisoners are longer. Those issues combine to create human rights abuses. That's the first harm to our plan. I probably want to take time for the second one. The inmates of these privately run prisons are malnourished and unfed. Psychiatrists who investigated a privately run prison in Mississippi found that the inmates were severely underfed and looked almost emaciated. During the incarceration, prisoners dropped from 10 to 60 pounds more than those at state and federal run prisons. The second human rights abuse is the fact that many private prisoners are forced into a modern day form of slavery. It's actually still written, or it was actually written to the 13th Amendment that you can be considered a slave under the law. So if you are a prisoner, then you are a slave under the state. So and that was used to bridge slavery and the work that slavery did. So private contracting prisoners for work fosters incentives to lock people up. Prisons depend on the income. Corporation stockholders who make money out of prisoners work lobbying for longer sentences in order to expand their workforce. The system feeds itself, says a study by the Progressive Labor Party. These prisoners make cents on the dollars and usually have laborious tasks and work long hours. Slavery was abolished except as punishment for crime. By abolishing private prisons, less prisoners will be sentenced to jail. They'll have shorter sentences and they'll be treated better like their government counterparts. Incentivizing the building of prisons has led to these abuses. By no longer contracting prisoners, there can be corrected. Because the only reason it's happening is because there's incentive to build these prisons so you can make money. Under this, like the system we have, economic system, it's profitable for more people to be put in jail. It actually will attract younger kids or that have different disciplinary things on their records in school to see how many prisons they should build, because they are already expecting some of these kids to end up in jail, so they're trying to help them. The second benefit to this is the taxpayer dollars we spend on these prisons, we can instead spend on more beneficial endeavors or services like education, so we can boost our education system with the money we save. And since we're talking about the real world and there's no fiating the plan and voting app doesn't make the prison complex go away, and this is also a takeaway from our time at the museum, two organizations that you can look up on your own time, because I don't really have time to talk about them in different speech, that fight the issues of private industrial complex are the Stop Mass Incarceration and Critical Resistance. They're two organizations that you can look up. And I encourage you to look them up in your time. That's all I have to say.
All right, so you said that the state and federal governments basically contract these private people out to run the prison system.
They contract them to build the prisons, build
the prisons. All right. So why do we use the U.S. federal government if the federal government is the one that's benefiting from this system in front of you?
The federal government itself doesn't benefit from the system. The reason a lot of these prisons are built is because they're built in municipality areas, because they can then give money to the mayor of the city or the representative. They can help with the finances of the campaign, and then in turn they will agree to help build these contracts. But the money that's made is going in private corporation hand, and the only people that can stop this who's responsible for it is our federal government. So if we hold them accountable, they're the people that have the authorization to stop these contracts. I can't stop the contract. If they're outlawed, the contracts don't happen. Yes.
Okay. So you say all these things about why the private prisons are incentivized to give more harsh punishments and be inhumane to their prisoners, but since you say that they're getting paid the same amount even if there's a prisoner or if there's no prisoner in the cell, Why are they incentivized to give harsher punishments and longer?
I mean, it's not, the harsher punishments isn't like, the people are doing labor, one, because, or they want prisoners because once they get these prisoners, they can contract them out to different, like, private corporations to work as laborers. They only have to pay them cents from the dollar. Like, they don't have to pay them minimum wage, they can pay them much less for that. So they contract them out as laborers as well. And they also, like, set up the contracts to where they will still get paid a certain quota for the amount of prison cells they have, even if they're not full. That way, there's a reason for them to build the prison. So if they build a prison and nobody gets in it, they still get paid as if that prison's full.
You said in your speech that private prisons are used to deal out harsher punishments, and you also said that it also makes better conditions for people. Are they making two different types of private prisons?
No, I'm saying that the federal prisons, like, so the ones that are run by the state have better conditions for the people than the ones that are run privately or contracted out.
What does the role look like post-split? What happens to the existing prisons that are still being contracted?
Okay, so what we're saying is, like, I mean, like, initially you can't just release all these people from prison because other prisons, like federal or state-run prisons, have to be built. And you can't just seize their property, because there are laws against that. So the idea is that you don't start any new contracts in any prisons. So the existing ones for now will still exist, but there will be none added on. And while the state-run prisons are built, you can then switch the inmates off to the state-run prison.
What about the inmates still being contracted out to private companies as laborers?
Well, that our plan doesn't necessarily solve or doesn't necessarily address that aspect. But I would say we're going in line with the plan that we hope that these inmates will be shifted once the state-run prisons are built from the private-run prisons into state-run prisons. Then those contracts will no longer be happening. Ross.
Since the 13th Amendment allows for slavery, usually it's interpreted to be the opposite. Can you explain a little more why that's?
So there's a clause in the 13th Amendment that says like that abolishes slavery, or like the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery, but there's a specific clause in the 13th Amendment that like is an exception to the slavery being abolished, saying that if you commit a crime and you are in prison, then you are property of the state, and thus you're still like a slave. You're a slave to the state. You are owned by the state. You're a property of that state.
So is it usually outlawing like the prisons or the contracting that's happening?
We're outlawing the contracting to private prisons.
So why do we have to like stop to build new prisons?
Because there are already prisoners in the private prison. So if the idea is that the private prisons treat them worse and they'll still contract them out, even if we're not like flowing new inmates into those prisons, we need a place to hold prisoners. And also, the general idea is that since more people are being convicted to fill these private prisons, the amount of prisoners will go down as well as these private prisons are starting to not be used.
One more question?
Yes.
Does this mean that, like, police will be less prone to wanting to, like, take action against sort of things because there's going to be less, like, drive to put people in prison?
The argument made is that a lot of police officers, or there's a push for police officers to arrest more people to fill prisons up because it's economically viable for some people, not for like the taxpayers, but for the owners of these prisons, the contractors, to have their prisons filled. You said that was the last question? Oh, I guess the next question.